Thank you for joining us for another episode of Cryptocurrent. Just one quick reminder. Cryptocurrent is a cryptocurrency and blockchain education platform that's bridging the gap between the curious newcomers who are just discovering the space and the thought leaders who are shaping its future. All opinions expressed by Richard Carthon, the Cryptocurrent team, and their guests on this show are exclusively their own opinions. You should not treat any opinion expressed by Richard, the team, and their guests as a specific inducement to make a particular investment or to follow as financial advice. This show and any other Cryptocurrent production is exclusively for informational purposes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cryptocurrent. Your host here, Richard Carthon. And today I have a special guest that is going to be informing us on a lot of ways that we can be protecting our assets, especially as it relates to crypto and everything that we're doing on top of the blockchain. So we have a very special guest, Brian Bradley with Bradley Legal Corp. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Richard. Thanks. And thanks for having me on. And this is going to be a really hot topic. And I'm not an expert in crypto, and I'm, not a guru. I'm just an asset protection attorney. And, it's just my niche just happens to focus on really rich, wealthy clients who are, investing in cryptocurrency as well. And so at the end of the day, we got to protect what we have, right?
Oh, 100%. And there's always more that we can be doing to not only protect ourselves, but protect what the wealth that we're creating and hopefully going to be either using for the betterment of our livelihoods and our families. And we want to make sure that we can keep all that as secure as possible. So I thought this was going to be a really good opportunity to give some people some more perspective. Of course, a lot of people in this space know different ways that they can protect their crypto, whether it's through cold wallets and other things like that. But there's even more that you might not have knowledge on. So we wanted to give that perspective. So before we dive into all of that, Brian, first we want to learn a little bit more about you. Can you give us some background on yourself?
Yeah. So, background on me, I, got into law as an injured athlete in college, and I kind of had to, refocus that energy and competitiveness. So I ended up going to law school because mom was like, you should really think about going to law school. You like philosophy and, good with logic. So I went to law school, I was supposed to end up being the next, big prosecutor. The economy crashed in, 08, 09, and 010. And so that job ended up getting rescinded and ended up transitioning into civil practice, which the economy wiped out. And so just to get experience, I literally went to state by state agencies and were like, hey, I need to get into court and you have all these clients and you guys can't pay lawyers to go in and do these trials on. I'll do these trials for free. Just, pay the covering costs.
Wow.
What? No way. I'm like, yeah, seriously. I just need to go in and get into court. And so that's how I got all this, trial experience as a young attorney back, 12 years ago. And that trickled down into just getting high profile cases. And I just realized so many people are marks and getting taken advantage of just because simply you own something that other people don't have, like you have investment properties or, you have a white coat because you're a doctor with a nice car. Next thing you know, you're getting sued or the negligence of your life. And I got tired of seeing people getting rung through the ringer just because they chose to live a better lifestyle and invest their money. And so I started looking at it as a different perspective of how do we protect this. And I reached out, about 10 years ago to the top, 3 firms in the nation that were doing it at the time and saying, hey, this is who I am. This is who you are. Let's find a way to work together. And, with my trial background, it helped, increase the type of protection that we have, because at the end of the day, when you create asset protection plans, I really only care what happens in court, not when you're not getting sued. I want to make sure they're nice and strong for when they're getting challenged by the attorney across the way from you trying to tear them apart. And it just transitioned into now 100% of my practice because I enjoy the practice of law. I'm one of those weird people who like taxes as well and investing my money and making more money. So it kind of allowed me to marry all of my passions into one building.
Got it. So you have a background in playing sports back in college. I do too. We'll talk more offline on that. But you took that and you were like, I want to go do trial work. Went into the 2008 recession essentially, and then said, I'm going to go work for free. I'm going to go figure this out. I'm going to get really good at trial law. And then found your niche within asset protection. And so during all this time, when did you first learn and start to hear about, cryptocurrency and blockchain? And when did it pique your interest to start to learn more about how you can start working with clients within that space?
Yeah, it's a good question. Really, as an investment for myself, I didn't start investing in cryptocurrency until maybe a year ago. I knew about it beforehand. It was more just, small amount of people speccing into it. Most of my clients didn't have it at the time, but just as an asset protection attorney, I just have to stay on top of what people are buying, and generally if, people have a lot of money, they're investing their money in a bunch of different areas. So we got to learn about it. And my partner or, affiliate attorney, senior affiliate, Douglas Laudmill was, actually a big crypto guy and blockchain guy. And, even tried creating his own mining companies and everything like that. So I would just listen to what he had to say and, trickle down effect down the line. And then just one day about, a year and a half ago, just every single client started having, crypto investments. And but what they weren't understanding is just how the IRS defined these things and that they do exist. They are discoverable. If you do get sued, they have to be disclosed. If you don't, you go to jail for perjury. And then it's a matter of, now that we know these things exist, which we can break this stuff down later on, how do we protect this from lawsuits to where they're not going to be forced, where I'm not going to be able to have my cryptocurrencies taken from me to exercise on some judgment. So how do we legally go about protecting our cryptocurrencies? And so just by nature of what our business is, we always have to stay on top of, assets and where people are placing their money.
Yeah. And I'm sure that by looking deeper into this, there's a lot of different areas or scenarios that people don't necessarily think through, but in worst case scenarios should have a plan for it. So as you look at this, and like you said, a lot of your initial clients didn't necessarily get into it, but as they began to, you started researching and looking more into how you could start protecting. What were some of the reoccurring pieces, the first steps of okay, I see this keeps happening. How do I at least start this first step of creating some protection?
Generally, the first steps are people realize they have something, and then they call me because either a neighbor gets sued or their business gets sued, a family member gets sued, and they get wiped out and they get scared. And then they call and say, hey, we need to do something for ourselves because we're living open and exposed. But most of the clients, when they call in and I ask them, hey, how much crypto do you own in crypto? And they're like, oh, why do you want to know that? Because it doesn't exist. And then I have to go literally through the explanation of, it does exist. The IRS defines it as a property. Here's the consequences. Now here's how we have to protect it. So most of the time it's just people owning, some sort of cryptocurrency in exchanges, but thinking it just doesn't exist and it's off on its own. And it's just by nature of purchasing it that it by itself is a product of asset protection, which it's not. And so then I have to explain how we go about protecting it after I explain the reality of what it actually is.
So let's start there. So how does the IRS define cryptocurrency, and how are people not aware of it, and how can it affect them either from a tax standpoint or even from a place if they're trying to come and take for consequences that potentially come? Let's just start there.
Yeah, I think we can just talk, taxing crypto, right? And then should we even go buy a car with it? And so you have to remember, and the big point here is that crypto is a property that's defined by the IRS. So I'm going to say this again. The IRS defines cryptocurrency as a property. So it's going to be taxed per each transaction. And what this means is that, for example, when you sell cryptocurrencies, it's a taxable event. Or when you convert it from one coin to another, like Ethereum to Bitcoin or Bitcoin to something else, like ADA or whatever. Or if you use it to buy anything like a car, or any other type of asset, like the pizza guy, I got a Bitcoin for selling a piece of pizza. That's a transaction. You'll pay capital gains tax on it. And any crypto transfers, that are in excess amount, I think it's right now $10,000, they need to be reported to the IRS as well. And so now if you just buy and hold crypto and you never sell it, that's not a transaction yet. So that does not really, apply to you. And you don't need to disclose it or report it. If you're a US citizen, just remember that, again, crypto is a property. And so it's going to be taxed exactly like a stock sale. And the challenge is that with a lot of like the crypto crowd here, they act like it's the wild, wild west, and that they're prone to just want to go find a workaround that fits into their mindset, or, that the answer that they want to hear, and don't really want to hear the truth. And so they'll just keep looking around for anybody that's going to tell them what they want to hear to validate their thoughts. And then they get in trouble down the road. The reality is that, you actually have multiple taxable events, like I mentioned, that come along with your crypto. It's just not as simple as saying that, hey, I owe no taxes until I convert it back to fiat currency or to dollars. That's what a lot of people's thoughts are, or that they think that they can just create some entity and tax structure in another country, run off to like Puerto Rico is like the big one that people keep calling and talking to me about. And they think that they're just going to be off the radar and don't have to disclose their holdings and not pay taxes on it, or that might even affect them positively in a lawsuit, which I'll talk about that later on. It's just incorrect. So if you own crypto in your portfolio, just make sure that your CPA is familiar with crypto and that it's up to date on it. They're up to date on the regulations, and they're always changing. I mean, they can change after this airs, or, while we're even talking on the phone. It's just everything's always moving fast in the digital world right now. And again, like, I just want to beat this point into your audience's head here, is that the IRS classifies crypto as a property. And so then you are taxed on transactions and capital gains. And even that definition of it being a property has a big effect on your ability to protect it during lawsuits.
So let's go there. So let's say that you are potentially in a lawsuit and you don't necessarily have a ton of assets to your name, but you do have some crypto. You've been holding on to that and been doing stuff with that. How can you walk us through like scenario like that?
Absolutely. And I actually am getting more and more of this, to where it used to be most of my clients had basically, 90% of the portfolio in real estate, and, some of it in a large stock, portfolio. Now I'm getting clients, not the majority of them, but a good amount, where they're like, they literally have no 401k, no stock accounts, zero real estate. And now 100% of their portfolio is all digital currency investments with like millions of dollars in the accounts. And how we go about protecting it is actually really simple. We would just assign them to a asset management limited partnership, or into an asset protection trust. Either way, directly into an asset protection, specifically a bridge trust, which is just a name that we use by reference. But we just want to make sure those exchanges and those wallets are not in your name. And then the benefit of transferring your crypto exchanges and wallets into your trust, or like in a limited partnership for a management company, is simply that if a person like you who's investing in crypto or like Bitcoin, you do get sued, or you do go into debt, the courts can force you to disclose all of your assets and your holdings. And this also includes currencies and properties. This then includes your digital cryptocurrencies. Remember, it's defined as a property. So this goes without saying that since crypto is a legal property, and it can be subject to court orders and disclosures and liens, and even, the exchanges that you're investing in can be subpoenaed to reveal the account ownerships and the information and the amounts and the funds available that you have. So these funds are very vulnerable to being seized by creditors. So the only way to really protect your cryptocurrency is to include it in your asset protection planning, like you would any other asset like real estate. And so there is this misconception, we were chatting about before we started recording, that cryptocurrency is untraceable and there's no way to know if you own it or how much you own. This is just not the case. In fact, I think like Forbes wrote an article about this topic, like last year. But when you're in a lawsuit and the discovery is served on you, which means like you're getting sued, the other attorney sends your attorney a bunch of questions, that you have to answer, and then judges sometimes send out asset disclosure lists, and then a judge orders you to disclose your assets. You either lie under oath and commit perjury and say you don't own any, or you go to jail for that, or you just disclose it. And each transaction, you need to remember that you make is recorded in that audible blockchain ledger. And the exchanges, again, can be served subpoenas on, and they will disclose what you own and how much. And the IRS is already tracking this stuff anyways. And so the good thing is that when you transfer your cryptocurrency into an asset protection trust or that limited partnership, the trust itself is a grantor's trust. And because it's a grantor's trust, you have no tax issues transferring it into it. So some people transfer their exchanges into purely offshore trusts, like a pure foreign Cook Island trust or a Belize trust or Caymans, whatever. And that's not needed. And that would actually expose you to mandatory disclosures. And then you'd be required to report your assets every year that you own in that trust, because you have to disclose all your assets that you have in purely foreign offshore trusts with the IRS and entities. So it actually goes against what you're trying to do. So what you want is to have some sort of offshore strength, which we can break down a bridge trust and what a bridge trust even is, later on. But then you want it domesticated here in the US. And you just need to remember, your crypto is a property. So we need to protect it like we normally would.
So a lot to unpack there. One of the first things that I definitely want to reemphasize to people, especially the newer people, is that yes, when things are put on blockchain is a digital database when you can follow everything. You literally can follow the money, you can follow transactions all the way through the course of origin to where they ultimately end up. Now, you don't necessarily know where the end origin is, whether it's a wallet or who that wallet is, etc., but you can follow the money. Now, one of the things that you brought up as far as being able to protect was creating this trust. Now, can you kind of, the brain trust, can you kind of explain? Bridge trust. Can you kind of go into explaining a little bit what is a bridge trust and how it's being utilized?
Yeah, so a bridge trust is a hybrid trust of a domestic US-based trust and a foreign trust, specifically a Cook Islands trust. So think of it like a hybrid car, okay? You're taking the best of both. You're taking the strength of a Cook Islands trust and combining it with the domesticated ease of use of a US-based trust. And so a bridge trust has been around for over 28 years, almost 30 years. And it is now the premier trust to kind of use for high net worth investors, like basically generally someone who has $1 million or more. Now, at the end of the day, it is a fully registered foreign offshore asset protection trust with all that 40 years worth of work in case law, all the way up to the Supreme Court. So it is a fully registered foreign offshore trust from the day we create it, with an offshore trustee in standby, like number 2 position in your back pocket, just in case you ever need them. But what we do is we build the bridge back for IRS purposes so that the IRS classifies that foreign trust as actually a domestic US trust. And we do this by complying with USC section 7701. It's what's called the court test and the control test. And it's like having 2 passports. You can have your Swiss passport and your US passport. And as long as you have your US passport, the US will consider you a US resident. The same thing here is true with trust. As long as you meet that 2-part test under USC section 7701, the US is going to say that it's a domestic trust. So as long as you have a US jurisdiction that has primary supervision over your trust, so like Nevada, and then you meet the court test by saying, hey, and then adding you into the trust as a trustee, as long as we meet that criteria, the IRS is going to classify that trust as a domestic trust. And so now what you have is you have all the strength of a foreign trust, what's called statutory non-recognition. We don't recognize any country's court orders or judgments in our back pocket, including the US. But what we're doing now is making it cheaper to set up, because normally a foreign trust is going to cost like $40,000 to $70,000 to set up and like $12,000 a year to maintain. So you have the strongest trust in the world, but most people aren't going to be able to afford to create them. But by domesticating it, it's now going to be cheaper to maintain. You're going to have that strength in the back pocket. But by being classified by the IRS domestically, now we don't have to do those IRS disclosures. So now we don't have to disclose what cryptocurrencies you're holding in this trust like you would if you're purely foreign. You're not going to have to file those 3520s and 3520As disclosing all the assets that the trust has. You're not going to have to do FACTA disclosures. So now it's cheaper to maintain and you're not going to have any tax filings because it's domestic. Worst case scenario, you have a doomsday lawsuit. You have to disclose what you own in the lawsuit because it's pending litigation. You're going to get the discovery served on you. We would do what's called breaking that bridge. Now the trust is purely foreign. Now you're going to be removed as control, but now all your assets are going to be safe. And if it's cryptocurrencies, we can go so far as now as have the offshore trustee recreate new wallets and exchanges and then move the assets.
Wow, that is very intricate and very, it's thought out. So obviously this is not your first rodeo and you have been through a lot of ways within the legal ways to protect crypto assets. But like you said, it sounds like it is a little bit, or it's an investment to get all of this set up, but it's probably the most secure way to both protect yourself, to not also have to be reporting everything. And then if by some chance you are finding yourself in some litigation and still need to protect yourself, you still have that in your back pocket, kind of like you said. So you're kind of protecting yourself from all angles.
Correct. And it's all set up beforehand, before you need it. And then you're not doing the illegal stuff like hiding assets, which then the IRS will eventually discover and drop the heavy hammer on you. And you need to, and by then realizing, okay, this is a, IRS classified, asset as a property. Now let's just protect it how it should be, like a normal property. And there's just like typical asset protection. It's just a matter of making sure the proper layers are in place and managed.
Right. And I know this is very interesting, and I know a lot of people who you've perked a lot of ears. Just people who are going to be listening to this are going to be like, never realized this is an option, how to get this going. And it sounds like something that you and your firm kind of like specialize in. So for someone looking to set something up like this, would they be able to work with you on this? Are there other things that you'd be able to potentially work with them with?
Yeah, they can work. So we represent clients nationally, and we have, probably close to 4,000 clients protecting over 5 billion worth of assets. And so like some of my clients have, I think worth like 15 million worth of cryptocurrencies.
Wow.
Point being, we work with everybody, nation and worldwide. It's asset protection. So it's just basically, transactional. And yeah, so we're not exclusive to one state.
Which is great. And I'm sure there'll be people calling with some questions, but as a follow-up to that, as more and more assets are being introduced into the crypto space, whether it's through NFTs, DeFi, metaverse, everything else, how do you see the law continuing to evolve in the future as more and more of the world is moving towards blockchain?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the great thing about the blockchain is that, you're providing for secure transfers, of secure, non-repeatable bits of information, coming from one person to another anywhere in the world. And so this is really a digital form of actual property title. It's called a digital signature. And so instead of me having, like a piece of paper, which, I know not all of your people are going to be able to see me waving a piece of paper. So, instead of having an actual like tangible document, which I can forge and then have to go into like all this whole legal battle of like, is it like real evidence and chain of title? Well, now we have it all connected through an unauditable, changeable blockchain. And this is revolutionary to where someone can't just say like, I don't like this, I'm going to go and erase it and change it. And so it's there, it's traceable. And then you're going to start getting into more digital contracts and even digital trust for like transferring immediately title. And the great thing about that blockchain is you don't need third-party, administrators on this. It can just start becoming peer-to-peer. And so this is one of the beautiful things, about the blockchain is when you're talking about a distrust in, fiat currencies and like the government, and you're talking about distrust of third-party banks and the banking system, the financial system. Well, partly why they're so mad about it is because it takes them out of the equation. And now this is going to become peer-to-peer through billions and billions of people.
Right. And so many good points there. And it's just, this is where things are headed. And there's going to be a lot more ways that, because things are going to be a little bit more transparent, it allows for more ways to potentially litigate. And actually brings me to, go ahead.
I wasn't going to say anything. I was just adjusting.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, like you've given us a lot of really good information, a lot of good things to unpack and that we can work with. And I always like to finish with a couple fun questions. And one that kind of comes up in this unique situation when we have a lawyer on you have had years of litigation. You've dealt with all kinds of different types of trials. If you had like a couple of things that you could impart wisdom to people who typically don't know about, I don't know if they ever find themselves in some legal mess, what do you think are 1 to 2 like core things that a lot of people get tripped up on, that if they like just tidbits of like, hey, hopefully you never get in trouble. But if you get in trouble, like 1 or 2 or 3 of these things will really help you.
Yeah, I'd be like, 1, if you have something to protect it before you get in trouble, before you get sued, because we can't do anything for you after the fact. You're in the rabbit hole. I'd have to exempt the lawsuit. So to protect things, it has to be set up beforehand, not after the fact. It's like trying to get insurance after you hit somebody with your car, after your house burns down. They're just going to deny you. Yeah. So same thing in the asset protection world. And then the next thing is, don't try to be the expert. Okay, if I go to see my doctor, I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm going to listen to what kind of my medical doctor says. So vet your attorney, find one that you trust, and then as you go through, ask your questions. But I wouldn't be not always second guessing and saying like, okay, I'm going to try to be, pretend to be the attorney here. That tends to go south, and it really burns, the relationship with the attorney that you want to protect you, and it actually ruins your case. So protect yourself beforehand. Get a good attorney. Don't play attorney, and just get expert advice when you need a good CPA. Get a good CPA who knows cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I think 3 solid gems there. With everything that you've been through your like journey of life and learning what you have, if you could go and give yourself 1 to 2 pieces of wisdom when you were first getting started in your lawyer career, what would you tell yourself?
You win more battles with kindness sometimes. Like you got to be tough and you can't get pushed around, but sometimes, if you come off too strong, you're just asking for a fight. So I learned, walk softly, carry a big stick. If you're always walking around with a big stick swinging around, most of the time you're always going to be fighting, and then you might lose more. And then the other one is just, like we were talking about how, the athletes thing, like sometimes we have pride. So I'd be like, check your ego at the door.
Yeah. Two great ones. Great reminders for myself and for everyone listening. Just kill people with kindness. Sometimes you gotta be ready for war, but you're gonna do a lot more good with being kind, and don't let your pride get in the way. So thank you for those 2 great reminders. But as we wrap up here, Brian, what is a final thought that you want to leave with everyone?
Yeah, like a new one that I've been kind of thinking of is, people always ask about money, how to make money, how to protect money, but unless your mind is right, like and you're managing your life, I would say like get your toxic dysfunction of yourself or your life and the people you affiliate under control, because then it'll be amazing how fast your money accelerates when you're under control, your mindset's under control, and you surround yourself with great people and successful people. You're going to accelerate so far financially, but it doesn't work until you have the mindset.
100%. So appreciate that final thought. Get your mind right. Brian, what are ways that people can connect with you, learn more about what you got going on, if they want to reach out?
Yeah, you can jump on my website, www.btblegal.com. I do it more as a legal resource and educational website. I did lots of case law, lots of educational videos. I'd rather people just learn about how to properly protect stuff and layer their asset protection plan. Then you can be armed to go and talk and vet attorneys, because now you have some knowledge, background supported by case law to ask them the questions and see if they have answers to them. Or you can just reach me out on my website, Brian, BRIAN at btblegal.com. I generally do a 1-hour free consultation just because I'd rather have you have good advice. And then whether we work together or not, I would just say take, the consultation and evaluation and run with it.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, I'm sure you're going to have some people reaching out. Thanks again for sharing all the information that you did today. And of course, for everyone listening, stay cryptocurrent.